Adam, you say you fixated on the size and shape of one of your body parts for many years. What was it?
It was my nose.
What didn't you like about it?
When I became an adolescent, I started to realise that it was protruding more from my face, and I became more aware of other people making comments about it, whether it be big nose, crooked nose.
What was school like for you?
I went to an all-boys high school, so
Yep.
it was mainly blokes, so it would be like big nose. But I did date a lot in high school, and a lot of my ex-girlfriends, no hate towards them, would say in intimate settings, you would be more attractive. Have you ever considered changing your nose?
Really?
Yes.
Where did you get your ideas about what a good nose should look like?
Yeah, that's really interesting because at the same time, in parallel, shows that were dominating TV were things like The OC, Extreme Makeover, The Biggest Loser. So I was kind of being made to see that the solution to anything that was judged harshly by society was to get some kind of operation to change it and fix it. Actually, I tried to do acting when I was a kid, and I was told multiple times that my face, it would be very difficult to cast on TV in Australia.
Wow. You met with a rhinoplasty surgeon 2 years ago. What did he tell you about your nose?
He obviously told me it was crooked, which I didn't dispute. And then he told me internally that it was twisted, which was concerning, but he said it wasn't life critical. But then on the side, ancillary to that, he told me you'd need a chin implant to make any new nose change look balanced on your face. As soon as I got told that there was a twist in my nose, I thought my breathing is being impacted. In my brain, I justified why I'm doing this because there's a medical reason behind it. But fixing the crookedness or doing a chin implant didn't convince me.
We have a picture of your profile here and what the surgeon said he could make your nose look like after. What went through your mind when he showed you that after photo?
Honestly, I wasn't that impressed. I guess because I'd built it up in my mind for so long that having a nose job would be my facial solution, right? And it would open opportunities for me, whether it be in dating or work or whatever. And then I saw that pic and I was just like, this is it. And in that moment, it was just me and facing the reality of changing my nose. The voices and the comments that I'd heard for years before, up until that point, were silenced.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tara, you also had a consultation with a cosmetic surgeon. This was after you'd had 3 children. What did you want to change about your body at that time?
Yeah, I wanted to have a breast augmentation and a tummy tuck. And I was just so happy to go to the surgeon to fix what I considered to be my broken body. And we stripped down, and the only way I can describe it is that he picked up my breasts like they were dirty tissues, because when you've fed 4,000 meals to your children, that's how you pick them up. And he grabbed what I described back then as the sort of the hot dog down here of the fat, and he was going to just chop it off. He was going to give me a flat stomach and put my body back to where he thought it should be. And what society told me is the body that would make me happy.
Did you decide to go ahead with the surgery?
I had an epiphany a couple of weeks later when I was watching my daughter play in front of me, and I thought, how am I going to teach Michaela to embrace her body if I can't? And if I have surgery, what message will that send her?
Did you try to change your body in any other ways?
Yeah, so after I decided to cancel that appointment with the surgeon, I was still stuck in a body that I hated. And I said to my trainer at the gym, I said, I want to know what it feels like to have her body. And she said, why don't you enter a bodybuilding competition? And I mean, never say never, I think, in life, because I never thought that I would do that. And I feel like a bit of a fraud, to be honest, because I did bodybuilding for 10 weeks, and yet people call me a bodybuilder, but it's not really the truth. But what I discovered in that particular body, for me, my experience, especially being on stage and having all these people look at me and judge my body, I just found it quite ridiculous that they were sitting there, especially the judges with their pens and they were noting things. And I realised at that point that my body is not an ornament, it's a vehicle in life. I'm here to do. And to have that particular shaped body for me took too much time and energy and obsession.
And did it make you happy?
No, it didn't make me happy.
You posted this before and after picture online. What kind of response did you get to that?
The photo went really viral, which seems a little bit ridiculous now that a woman learns to embrace her body and it makes headline news around the world. Over 100 million people saw it within a matter of months. I'm really grateful in a way now that I've, 10 years later, that I've had the opportunity that happened, because I've been able to talk about my story, how I feel about my body, and also share the platform for others to do that through filmmaking and storytelling and writing books. And there's a lot to say on this subject, and I'm glad that I'm a really small part of that conversation.
In January, you were named Australian of the Year for your work promoting a more positive body image. Why do you think you were chosen for that?
Well, that's a question really that only the judges could answer. I'm not sure I can.
You now prefer the term body acceptance rather than body positivity. Why?
I think it's just about respecting where everyone's at, and we all have our own journeys. There's no right way or wrong way to have a body or feel about a body too.
April, what does body positivity mean to you?
For me, as someone who has spent a lot of time, I guess, talking in this space more from my point of view, my lived experience is vastly different from most of the people in this room and in the audience. For me, body positivity comes from a movement, a social activism movement from the 1960s that was started by queer black femmes. So it has some roots in activism and that people wanting to strive for the perfect body, the body that Taran's talked about. It is based in anti-blackness, in racism. It's a very difficult subject to talk about without people feeling uncomfortable.
What messages did you get about your body from your family when you were growing up?
Not necessarily just from my family, but from pretty much everyone around me. It was just comments. It was just people feeling really free to say how they felt about how I looked, which, when you think about it, is actually kind of rude. You have such a beautiful face. If you lost weight, you could be a model, because, curve models were not a thing in the 80s. I grew up in a family where there were lots of femme people who were focused on their weight. So they talked about their own bodies. The way that they talked about their body reflected onto me.
Did you ever diet when you were growing up?
I think the question really is, did I ever not diet?
Right.
As a fat kid who is now a fat adult, I was on the diet wheel from being a teenager. Sometimes that looked like restricting. Sometimes that looked like going on an eating plan. Sometimes that looked like counting all of your calories. All of these different ways in which we police ourselves in the ways that we interact with food, because we've been given all this messaging about food having moral value, good food, bad food, naughty food, and also about what kind of person you are depending on the shape and the mass of your body.
And you had an interesting birthday present one year?
Yes, a conversation with a friend which led to them saying, I'm not going to give you a present this year, I'm just going to give you money towards your Jenny Craig.
So, money for weight loss?
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
How much time did you spend thinking about your body?
All of it. In every context. When I sat down, was that chair going to break? Will I be able to buy clothes if I go into this store? If I go to the gym, people will laugh at me because I look bad while I'm at the gym, but also will tell me when I'm on the street to go to the gym, which makes literally no sense.
When did that change for you?
When I had my son, I really felt strongly how obvious it was that he was watching everything I did. He saw everything good and bad, and I wanted it to be more good than bad.
You talk about fat liberation and fat positivity. What do you mean by that?
Fat liberation and body positivity are very closely aligned. It's not about just being like, oh my God, I embrace everything about myself every day, all day. Like, I'm so cute. I mean, I am. That's not the point. It's about being able to understand that for a lot of people, they find that they balk at words like fat and therefore fat liberation, because we're still in a very stigmatised space of living in a fat body or being part of a group of fat people. Out in public especially, it is everybody's business to stop the ongoing hatred, which truly it is. That sounds like a strong word, but it isn't.
James, you're a personal trainer. You work with a lot of clients who are unhappy with their bodies. What do you think of the body positivity movement?
I think it's great. There have been some extreme cases of it maybe being hijacked for someone's own agenda, but I do think there is definitely some kind of cognitive dissonance where some people have potentially chosen bad trainers, used bad methods, done very silly diet plans or meal replacement shakes, and ended up very disgruntled. And they get to a point where it's easier to turn around and hate on everyone else doing it. They want to discredit the whole system and bring it down. The reality is to see dieting as broken, as to see fat loss as a bad thing, as to see, going to the gym 6 times a week as obsessive, because that helps them live with their reality.
Is body shaming on any level helpful?
No, and I don't think any of the researchers ever backed that as a viable means of motivating people to do anything. When we look to intrinsically motivate people, we need to give them something they find fulfilling and rewarding. And that's one of the biggest things that people overlook in this big battle. We want to be pairing people up with something they genuinely enjoy.
Do you think the body positive movement is an excuse to be fat?
No. I think that I can speak on behalf of a man who, no matter how much weight I've put on or how my physique is cyclically changing with the seasons or whatever, I think it's about embracing yourself and being happy with that.
Adam, apart from your nose, are there other aspects of your appearance you're focused on?
I'd be lying if I said no. I am concerned about my weight. And I guess as I go older, I think about my receding hairline. They're probably the two things, but I don't think I put as much of a focus on it as I did like my nose, because it's not something that people have ever come up to me, and they might now, but they've never come up to me and been like, your hair's thinning or your body's not great. No one comes up to me and says your body's great either, but they don't. Yeah, which is true.
Were you a larger child?
I was. When I was younger, I was probably like 100 to 130 kilos. I was quite stressed during high school because I was just focused on getting good marks and getting a great ATAR. But that weight masked my nose, to be honest, because my face was fuller and you couldn't actually see it protrude as much. And then as I grew taller, and I also naturally just shed some weight and shed stress too, the nose came out to play.
James, can you relate to that?
Yeah, I was an overweight kid in the school canteen asking the dinner ladies what was fattening. I was like, is this fattening? Is this fattening? I could never get an answer, and my parents did a great job raising me, but they didn't know the answer either. So I definitely went through growing up with those kind of insecurities, not being picked for the sports team. And yeah, I mean, it does have an impact on you. I genuinely, similarly to that story, decided to be funny because I couldn't control my weight, but I could make people laugh. So whether it was pulling someone's seat out from underneath them as they were sitting down or whatever it was to...
Oh, you were that kid.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Ah. Did your body image change when you started working in gyms?
Yes. So 1 year into being a personal trainer, I mean, all I wanted to be was taken seriously. And I thought, how can I be taken more seriously? So I'd speak to the one big guy that everyone knew, and I said, what do I need? And it's very easy to acquire anabolic steroids. And people say, do you want to work a year for some progress, or do you want to get it done in 10 weeks?
Right. So the steroids you felt you needed to have to be taken more seriously. Did the steroids help?
Oh, yeah. And that's the problem. They feel amazing. And your training is almost like a holiday. And all the changes that were happening made me look a lot like the people that said they weren't on steroids. My shoulders ballooned up, my neck disappeared. I looked like most Hollywood figures when they get in shape for a film. I would wake up with great vigor and enthusiasm to train. And then it kind of occurred to me that all those people who I thought knew more than me were just hiding a secret of using this because they were also probably facing battles to be taken seriously.
You stopped taking steroids after 2 years. Why?
Every time you take them, you say, right, that's it. This is the last time I'm going to do it, because I was living at home with my parents. And for anyone that doesn't know, the safest way is to inject. So I've now got syringes, I've got pumps, I've got vials of testosterone oil, and I'm having to hide this from my parents at home. So I've got my mum coming down the corridor, telling me dinner's ready, whilst I've got cramp in my hand and a syringe hanging out my bum.
Wow.
There have been times where I was thinking, yeah, mate, you probably want to stop this after this cycle. And then you say to yourself, okay, maybe just one more. And that's how the cycle kind of carried on for a few years. And then I was very fortunate to stop.
Linda, at your heaviest, how did you feel about yourself?
I looked in the mirror and I thought, why? Why did you let yourself go like this? Because I did not like what I saw.
You recently made a big change to your body. What was that?
So I decided, which was not a very easy decision, it was not my first choice either, to get cosmetic surgery done.
And what procedures did you get done?
What didn't I get done rather than what I did? I got extended arm lifts. I got my breasts lifted, 360 belt lipectomy, which goes around your body, and I had a butt lift. I had a thigh lift and liposuction, and I had a facelift.
Had you tried other things to change your body?
I have, Kumi. I've always been sporty. I was a sporty one in our family. My sister was the brainy one, so I did exercises, I did shakes, I did healthy eating, I did diets. My doctor prescribed Saxenda for me. I exercised 6 days a week in the gym, and I was so determined, and I was like, I almost crawled out the gym every day, and I know fueling your body and working out goes together, but I did everything, and I didn't lose anything, no centimeters, no weight. I believe in my clothes fitting me and not really about the scales, but I tried, nothing worked for me. I'm healthier now that I've done it. Just having my organs sort of breathe again, it feels great, and I don't feel ashamed of doing what I did.
How would you describe your body image now?
So happy. I'm so happy to have the old Linda back. What other people say or think about me or the way I look is irrespective to me. It's just, I just needed my old self to come back, because I didn't even want to go shopping anymore, because it broke my heart that I looked in the mirror and I saw what I saw. And no offense to anyone else, it's me. It was my choice to do what I felt I wanted for my body, because I wanted the old Linda back.
Adam, you decided to not go ahead with cosmetic surgery after wanting it for years. What do you think, listening to Linda's story?
Linda's obviously very proud of her choices. I'm equally proud of my choice too.
Jess, are you right about body positivity and confidence? Have you had pushback to your work?
Yeah, I most definitely have, I suppose, in the body positive space. I've had skinny shaming. I've definitely been shamed for being someone that maybe shouldn't be writing in this space or speaking in this space. I've definitely felt a sense of invalidation in my work at times, definitely.
What struggles have you had with body image?
This whole notion of my body was just, if it wasn't covered, it was something that was very sexualised, and that I needed to hide that. A lot of comparisonitis growing up, so I definitely went through a stage where I just thought I would be more desirable if I had bigger boobs, things like that, that I know a lot of younger females, some of my friends shared the same sort of experiences.
Is it too personal to ask how you feel about your boobs now?
No, definitely not. I've come to love my breasts, and I'm so glad, because I really considered getting surgery. I thought about how could I do this in a way, because it felt shameful for me to, I suppose, voice that insecurity. And I'm personally so glad I never went through with that, because it's been a journey to really come to love my breasts as they are.
Sarah, you were born with tibial hemimelia. What does that mean for you?
It basically meant being born different to everyone else. Tibial hemimelia is when I was born, it was an absence of both my tibias, and the tibial side of the foot, the feet were missing. So that's a picture of me when I was younger. So I was born with my fibula, and as you can see, it was just 2 little bones. They couldn't wait there, so they weren't useful at all. So it led to my amputation when I was 6 years old. And so I became a bilateral above knee amputee at the age of 6, and that's a photo of me in primary school. And I was a relatively happy child, definitely. And being disabled, being different, didn't really matter too much to me when I was younger.
How did you feel about your body when you were growing up?
High school is obviously a difficult time for most people, and including myself. That was when I realised that I was different and people started making me feel like I was different. And so that's when I started wearing my prosthetic legs. They don't look as cool as they do today, but that's when I started wearing my prosthesis because I felt like a fish out of water, and I started being teased in high school as well. And I used to be called No Legs Sarah, which in hindsight is very original of them. I have to
Isn't
admit,
it?
very original. But unfortunately, my teenage brain thought, oh my God, I'm No Legs Sarah, and that's me, and I don't know if I want to be me. But unfortunately, I couldn't change that about myself, but it was definitely a part of me that I hated, particularly growing up.
Did your disability affect your body image?
100%. But it wasn't just my disability, it was also the representation around people with disability in the media, in TV, particularly growing up in the 90s. It was, obviously I didn't see a person of colour or definitely not a person with disability. And combining that lack of representation with the view that society has of beauty with my disability, it was just a big ball of feeling unworthy and feeling, I guess, not beautiful within myself as well.
4 years ago, you started an Instagram account. How did that help?
First off, it's called No Legs, No Worries because it was a nod to the bullies at school. And honestly, just before I turned 30, I was still feeling really quite down about myself. And even though I was successful in terms of my personal life and my career, there was always a part of me that thought that I was not good enough. And I just thought that I was not worthy. So social media, I know it has a lot of negative aspects to it, but for me, social media gave me the insight to see others who were different, missing limbs, being in a wheelchair, using adaptive technology, who were not only surviving, but they were thriving in life.
What are your views on body positivity?
For me, body acceptance is a really big thing, and that's what I believe in, because the body positivity movement, when it started, it was quite inclusive, but I think recently it has been taken over by, marketing, etc., by beauty companies and promoting a certain type of image, which is not very inclusive. It doesn't encompass person of colour and definitely not people with disability. So literally, we are not in the picture. So for me, body positivity is not inclusive.
Could it be detrimental, in your view, to someone who's not happy with their body?
I believe so, and it depends on the language that's being used to describe body positivity. So, the hashtag love your body, because as a person with disability, and I obviously don't speak for every person with disability, but for myself, I don't love my body all the time. And my body fails me. I've got sore back, chafing on my legs, and I fall over. And so that's my body, that's the body that I have, and it does not provide for me the way I would like it to all the time. So saying love your body the way it is always can definitely have a notion of the toxic positivity, which I think is quite detrimental to how I see myself, because I think it's unnatural to say love your body all the time the way it is, and B, if I don't love my body all the time, does that mean there's something wrong with me? And, then it's my fault that I'm not loving my body all the time.
Janu, you have a condition called neurofibromatosis. What does that mean for you?
So neurofibromatosis is a set of genetic conditions, and they cause tumours to grow through the body all along where there are nerve cells, so like the brain, the spine, in your limbs, but obviously also your skin. And so when I was first diagnosed, there was no obvious sort of tumours there wasn't many obvious tumours on the outside. So my extended family sort of advised my parents, don't tell anyone she has this genetic condition because, all these horrible things will happen, and they listed a whole bunch of things. And my parents were young, they were not much older than I am now, and so they listened to the elders in the family and they listened to the extended family, and I was told, don't tell anyone about it.
What was it like for you keeping that secret?
It was very hard because it was all well and good when I was a young kid, but then when I became a teenager and I hit puberty, like the hormones that rage through your bodies, the tumours just grew everywhere. And so people noticed, and so they'd ask questions, but I couldn't talk about it. So I was in this difficult position where I couldn't authentically answer. And when people know you're hiding something, it makes it very hard to form relationships. So it became very isolating.
Did your condition affect the way you felt about yourself?
Absolutely. Like as a teenager, when you looked at the cover of magazines, the women who graced the front of magazines were these tall, slim, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, able-bodied women with flawless skin, silky hair. I didn't fit into that. So yeah, it was pretty challenging. And then the South Asian beauty standard was fair skin, long, black, silky hair, perfect curves and everything, and I didn't fit into that either. So yeah, I didn't fit in anywhere.
What kind of things have people said to you about your appearance?
There's been a whole gamut of things that have been said to me, and a lot of it is like unsolicited advice on what I should do to get rid of the things on my skin. And okay, I feel weird saying this on television, but a guy came up to me and he said to drink my own urine to get rid of the warts on my skin.
Wow, just popped up to you and
He
said
just
that?
literally walked up to me and said that, and I was so taken aback, I just sort of laughed awkwardly, and he said, "Don't laugh, it's a real thing."
Wow.
Yeah.
Have other things been said to you?
Someone said to me, and they tried to package it in a compliment by saying, "Oh, wow, you're so strong. If it was me, I would have killed myself." And, it was meant to be a compliment, but it was pretty offensive.
Has anyone ever said to you something like, "Oh, well, just love the skin you're in"?
Yeah, people have said that to me. "Oh, you just need to learn to be happy with your skin and you need to learn to love it." But I think it's not helpful, as there are days when my body, I'm in pain because, they're nerve cell tumours, and my skin is always itchy because of it's just how it is with NF. And so yeah, there are days when I look at my body in the mirror and I just think, ugh. And I think we need to actually encourage people to sit with those negative emotions and, work through them and let them pass, but don't try and suppress them.
Andrew, how would you describe your relationship with your body?
A lot better now, but for most of my life, pretty bad.
What was your battle with?
I've been different weights over my life, but it's always in the back of my mind, and I think a lot of it's fueled by the media, what I should look like. And, looking back at some of those pictures now, I just think, what was that about,
How important is the body positivity movement for people who live in larger bodies?
Body positivity for me means if people are less stigmatised, a lot more can happen and a lot less bad stuff will happen.
Do you have any concerns about the body positivity movement?
My concern is, and this is from my own point of view, that as I got bigger, I started developing more health issues that weren't apparent when I was younger and more active, and a lot of comorbidities that became worse and worse to a certain point where I was really close to being in serious trouble. So that's what I would point out to people. Just be aware, not so much the size that you are or what you look like, but other things can creep in, particularly as you get older too. And if something traumatic happens in your life, it may exacerbate that. You might really put on a lot of weight, which is what happened to me at a certain point. So just be aware of that, that's all I'd say.
At your biggest, what was your health like?
Not good. It was a struggle to get up in the morning. Just the pain in my feet and my legs and all that, just getting off the bed. Being in new situations with other people, like coming here tonight would have absolutely freaked the hell out of me. Being with all these new people. When you're living with obesity, you can see it on you, so that's a scary thing.
Nick, you're an endocrinologist specialising in obesity management. What are the current national guidelines around a healthy weight?
I think firstly, people need to understand that you don't all have to be the same shape to be healthy. And as the term suggests, they're healthy weight guidelines. They're only guidelines. And the important thing is we've been talking about appearance, but we really need to look at the health consequences of people having obesity. There are different ways of measuring obesity, and most doctors in their consultation rooms can measure someone's weight, They can measure someone's height, and they can also measure someone's waist measurement, because someone who's taller obviously can be a lot heavier. So BMI, which takes into account weight and height, is one of the measures. But you also have to remember different ethnic groups. Someone who's of Asian background, someone who's Aboriginal, or someone who's Polynesian doesn't fit into the Caucasian range of weight. And I think the important thing is when you identify someone who's outside of what the normal range is, and for a Caucasian population, that's between a BMI of 19 to 25, or if you look at someone's waist, a healthy woman is supposed to have a waist of less than 80 centimetres, and a man is supposed to have a waist of less than 94 centimetres. But if someone has measurements outside of those parameters, then the important thing is to actually look, do they have any health consequences as a result of that? They're only guidelines. And I think the important thing is once someone has a measurement, then it needs to be followed up. In other words, do they have health consequences as a result of that?
We've heard our guests talk tonight about the shame of weight stigma. Does this stigma have an effect on health?
Oh, without a doubt. If someone is lucky enough to be very large and yet they don't have diabetes, they don't have blood pressure problems, they don't have cholesterol problems, they don't have arthritis, in some respects they should be celebrating that. But everyone looks upon them and has all of these judgments that they make. They're judged, and in so being judged, they're stigmatised. And that can lead to mental health issues. And I think a lot of the mental health issues are actually caused by people's judgment or stigma upon people, feeling anxious, feeling depressed. And in some cases, that leads to eating disorders as well, or significantly contributes to them.
The WHO, the World Health Organization, classes obesity as an epidemic, but from what you're saying, what we're hearing tonight, would another word be more helpful?
From a medical perspective, I think the word obesity is a medical term.
Yep.
And I think for the individual, it's different to what our health bureaucrats and other people need to, and our government need to address. They need to understand that, yes, our community as a whole has put on weight and people have become bigger, but what that means is that they need to provide more resources for people in this situation who have health issues related to their obesity. But if you don't have a health issue related to it, well, you shouldn't have to require any resources as such.
April, what are your thoughts about this?
I think that while I appreciate everything that's been said around obesity, it is important to know that making it a medical problem, I think, gives too much licence to the idea that, once again, there's a problem and it needs to be solved. And it makes people who are labelled that way, and I think it's a form of faux politeness to use the word obese instead of saying fat because you think saying someone's fat is offensive. And I think that the idea that you would avoid speaking about someone's weight in fear of offending them, although that's never been my experience with the GP, they're not worried about offending you at all, is that you aren't having a frank conversation with them about their body because they're not having a frank conversation with you because they come into that room and they expect to be stigmatised. But also, there is a reality that some people will experience health issues at any weight. Your body could do any of the things that it does if you're a fat person, if you were a thin person. And so I think that it's really important that while the work that you're doing and being able to make a safe place for someone to seek medical treatment is a key part of the liberation of all people, I think anti-ableist and fat liberation activists will agree that making a space where people don't feel unwelcome, and whether that's a space where they're seeking medical help, whether that's a social setting, it can only be good for everyone.
Nick, is promoting weight loss still effective?
If you have an obesity-related complication, the best way to manage that is by managing their obesity. And I agree with April, yes, you can get conditions that occur irrespective of your weight. But if you carry a lot of excess weight and if you have a condition that's related to that weight, then you should target that weight if possible. And you should provide all of the support, the supervision, if you need medications, etc. So in that context, yes, weight loss is very important. But the important thing just is to make sure, if you have the obesity or the excess weight, to go looking for things. There are a lot of people that say, I have got obesity, but I'm perfectly healthy. But if you haven't checked for diabetes, if you haven't checked for sleep apnea, if you haven't checked for all of these other conditions, Our bodies are amazing. It normally takes, we need to knock out 90% of an organ for us to have symptoms. And I sometimes would joke with some of my patients at one of the hospitals I work at, and they say, oh, but I'm okay, doc. And I'll say, if I were to hang you out of this window on a rope and I cut the rope down to 10%, would you accept that? And they say, no way. So the important thing is make sure you check, and if it is related, then sure, target it. But do it in a humane, safe, non-judgmental way.
April, is positive body image a good thing?
Of course, I think that body image, body positivity, fat liberation, body neutrality, having positive health outcomes for people are all a really big issue that we all have a part in solving. And I think we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to feel the way that Tyron felt when she posted that before and after, right? So I think the work that Tyron does is a stepping stone towards hearing about the work that I'd like to talk about. Perhaps it's also a stepping stone towards feeling differently about yourself, being able to seek help from your GP. Maybe it's about finding the 1 in 5 disabled people in your life and embracing them and helping them to feel body neutrality. Whatever it looks like, I think we all have an important part to play. And the most important part is that you always need to look behind you, because there's always going to be someone, as you step forward into feeling good about yourself, understanding your privilege, there's going to be someone behind you who doesn't necessarily have that same knowledge. We've talked about being on a journey. If that's the phrase that works for you, whatever it looks like for you to feel like your body is not the most important thing about you, then I think that's valuable.
Jessa, you've been dismissed when discussing body image issues because your body fits the ideal. How would you now describe your relationship with your body?
The way I relate to my body now is very different to how I used to when I was a teenager. I feel like I personally have more so gone down a route of like embodiment rather than this body positivity. For me, body positivity, from what I have witnessed, it's so tied into the way that we look. Body image, again, it can feel dissociative because it's as if we're looking at ourselves from an outside perspective rather than being in our bodies. So for me, it's really been a journey of going within rather than comparing myself to other people, feeling the weight of all these expectations and pressures to look a certain way, and having my worth so tied up in the way that I look, because I am so much more than the way that I look, and I have so much more to offer the world than just, you know, what I look like. And I've really struggled with that in terms, that's become a real insecurity in terms of, why am I here? Is it because of my brain, or is it because of the way that I look?
You're a nudist. How long have you been living a nude lifestyle?
So yeah, about 10 or so years ago, I started going to the nude beach because I was feeling quite sexualised at what we call, us nudists call, a clothed beach, a textile beach. I felt a sense of, there was this competitive nature in the air about like how you looked in your bikini, and I just wanted to be able to go to the beach to relax rather than feeling objectified or sexualised. And my first experience at a nude beach was just really profound for me. So since then, I've sort of gone down that route of, yeah, becoming more active in the nudist lifestyle.
You're a yoga teacher and you teach nude yoga classes. We filmed one of them. Let's take a look.
Whenever I tell people that I teach naked yoga classes, most people are pretty shocked. We all have a naked body. I think a lot of us have hang-ups around our body and the way we perceive our body. And so I think something like naked yoga can be really radical for a lot of people. But then there are people that really are working towards healing their relationship with their body and just feeling more comfortable in their skin. And when you spend a lot of time naked, you really start to notice how you feel in your body rather than this emphasis on how you look. First and foremost, thank you so much for joining me for this evening's mixed naked yoga class. Just remember to listen to your body, honour your body's boundaries, and we'll get into it. Lifting the chest, baby cobra. And exhale into downward facing dog for 2 breaths. I have a lot of regular students and I've noticed definitely an improvement in their confidence. And also just, I think it's so healthy to be exposed to a diversity of bodies, a diversity of shapes, sizes, colours, ages, where there's no filters, there's nothing to hide behind, no clothing.
It's made me feel more love for my body because you see all different kinds of bodies and it's given me more compassion and love for myself.
It's unreal. It's basically, I suppose, liberating. It's freedom.
The divine within me honours the divine within you. Namaste.
Would any of you, or have you gone to a nude yoga class, James?
I think it would unlock a whole new realm of insecurities.
Yeah, right.
Maybe some that I can't fight in the gym.
Okay. Jessa, what advice would you give people who aren't comfortable being naked?
People always ask me, how do I, I'd love to spend more time naked. And I think if you can start in the privacy of your own home and just, even when we're little, we're taught, you go from the bathroom to a bedroom and in the privacy of your own home, you've got to cover up with a towel. And if we can unpack those kinds of things and just begin to even bring awareness to it, I think that's the start.
Does anyone ever say to you, oh, well, that's easy for you to say. You've got a great body. You look amazing without clothes on.
I definitely have people saying, well, yeah, if I was your size, I'd do that. And then there's people saying, I could never do that, regardless of size. But definitely I've had those comments. I think that it's never okay to invalidate someone else's experience just because of the way that they look. We don't know what battles they've fought just by the way that they look. So I think, just being mindful of that.
Adam, you'd been contemplating surgery to change your nose for most of your life. What made you rethink going ahead with it?
I'm a multiracial individual, so I've grown up as an Italian, Iranian, Australian. Most of my life I have known my Italian side because most of them are based in Sydney. But my father came to Australia many years ago as an asylum seeker, and he came alone. So he's got an over 50-person family who all live in the central desert part of Iran, and I've never met them, including my grandparents, or I hadn't met them at this point. So in 2019, I went on a trip to Iran because I really wanted to get to know my family, and I'd been waiting for such a long time, and it's difficult to get a visa, it's difficult for them to come here, and I'd only seen photos, and that was pretty much where I had a kind of epiphany.
What happened there?
Well, I met a large group of people that were my blood or part of my blood, and my grandma, when I see these photos I get emotional. I felt like I belonged, like I could see that I shared the same nose. So when I think about my nose and when I think about any kind of ill thought that might want me to change it, instead I'm now thinking about my family, my tribe, my lineage, people that are in my blood that I get to represent in Australia that don't have the same privileges and rights and opportunities that I have growing up here. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm super lucky.
Did you feel glad that you didn't change your nose?
100%, and I wouldn't. I don't even think about it.
Taran, you were named Australian of the Year for your work as a body image activist. What are you hoping to achieve with this platform?
Yeah, our mission this year is to reach 1 million Australian children with the message of embrace. We made a documentary called Embrace Kids, where we not just talk about body image, but inclusivity, gender representation, bullying. We cover off a lot of the big subjects that we need to talk more about. And film is a great way to open our hearts and our minds, and kids are watching the film and they don't even know they're being educated. So we're really excited to get that out into schools.
Linda, you have a daughter, an 11-year-old daughter. How do you talk to her about body image?
She actually did ask me, Mummy, why did you do this? And I said to her, my girl, because I felt it was the right thing for Mummy to do. I felt it was my time to look after myself in a way that I felt worked for me. But I also say to her that she needs to know that there are healthier ways to make sure your life is led the way it should be, in the sense of drinking more water, eating fresh fruit and vegetables, and exercise. And because I really want to show her that surgery is not the way out.
If your daughter wanted to get cosmetic surgery one day, how would you react to that?
I think if she's old enough to take care of herself and she's old enough to be an adult and think like an adult and make her own choices, I would support her, because I had great support from my family, because they knew how I felt, because I suffered from depression. My outlook just diminished when I looked in the mirror, and it was slowly starting to take me backwards and backwards and backwards, and I had to do something. And whatever she decides to do one day, I will support her 100%.
Andrew, you recently had gastric sleeve surgery. How has that changed things for you?
It's changed a lot of things, and weight is one of them, but that foreboding feeling in the morning, getting up and trying to navigate everything you have to do in terms of, your eating and exercise and those things. There's a lot more lightness in my day. That's not hanging over anymore, and most importantly, I'm much more present. All those background programs of having to worry about this and that, all those tapes aren't really happening so much, so I'm much more present in the moment. And my son is in his final years of high school, 16. I'm, I think, a lot better person to be around, so I'm very grateful for that. So weight is a factor, but there's so many other things that have come from that for me. Yeah.
Sarah, what's your relationship with your body now?
My relationship with my body is ever changing. It's a fluid relationship, and it's something that I do have to work on. There are days where I look in the mirror and I think, oh my God, this is, or it's more that, I feel like I have a backache, or I feel like I can't do something. So for me, my body, the way it is something that I am definitely working towards. And being a person with disability, it's definitely something that is not the same every day. And I think even without a disability, I think that is probably relatable to everyone as well. But it's definitely at a space where I'm more comfortable with the way I feel, the way I am, the way I do things. And, when I'm in a shopping centre, comes up to me and says, oh my God, look at her robot legs, I'm more than happy with that comment, because I know, particularly coming from a child, it's something that they're curious about, and I'm happy to educate and raise awareness of that, which obviously is different for other people with disability, depending on their story. But for me, I'm at a place where I am happy to discuss it.
Janu, you said comments from friends and strangers about your skin played a role in how you saw yourself. Yeah. What would you say to those people now?
So this is a thing that I recently saw, and it's called the 5-second rule. Now, the 5-second rule, it isn't about, dropping food on the floor and how quickly you pick it up to eat it.
It's 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Depends how good the food is. No, but the 5-second rule is, if you see someone and you spot something about their appearance that they can't change in 5 seconds, so their weight, their skin, a disability, anything like that, don't mention it.
You kept your condition a secret for years. How has your body image changed since you've been more open about it?
I definitely do have a better sort of feeling about my body image, and I actually feel worthy of love now and worthy of acceptance. But I'm not going to lie, I don't feel that way 100% of the time, but I'm definitely in a much better place than I was, say, 10 or 15 years ago. So, yeah.
Janu, thank you so much, and thank you to you all for being here tonight. It's been such a pleasure to have you in this space. Thank you too for joining us. You can catch up on this episode and all the others on SBS On Demand. I'll see you next time.